Coming up next is information on conflict resolution by one of our nurse educators. Let's listen to see how we can make a difference and help resolve conflict.
Hi everybody, my name is Clarissa Aguirre. I am a registered nurse here at DHR Health. I'm one of 3 general educators here. So welcome, it's good to have you. We are going to go over just a little bit of things that I'd like to talk about, which is conflict resolution. But before I do that, I want to make sure that you get a keen insight on how I became to be where I am today. I know that I've always wanted to help the children of the Valley. I just didn't know how I wanted to do it. And I feel like being a nurse, you have so many venues in which you can pursue that. So don't think it has a general topic or a name. Nursing can get into almost any type of medical field that you can, it's just really just the surface. Here at DHR Health, I serve as a general educator where I orientate all the new nurses, all the CNAs, which are certified clinical assistants, we need them, our medical assistants. We get to also participate in courses like this with you so we can prepare on what you should mentally prepare yourself to see if this is something that you want to pursue. I am an American Heart instructor, so we teach anything from BLS, ACLS, and PALS. I'm also a nonviolent crisis intervention, which I'm really excited about to share with you, and that's going to go back to our conflict resolution. I am also a trauma certified course instructor, as well as other certification classes that we have for our hospital. So let's go ahead and start. I do want to talk about conflict resolution because it doesn't mean that it's just something that you see in your schools. You can also see conflict resolution's necessity even in a working place, and it doesn't have to be in the hospital. However, we have to mentally prepare ourselves for that because there are many situations that are hard for people. You know, the hospital isn't an environment where people want to be. People are here, they're sick, something bad has happened, and we're trying to help them recover. So one of the things that I've learned, even amongst working with directors and other educators and clinical coordinators that put together the staff to make a unit work, is communication. And how do we want to communicate? You have to understand yourself as an individual and how you're going to intervene positively, right? One of the things that I like to share is you don't make permanent decisions on temporary feelings. Have you ever been guilty of that? Have you ever said something to someone that you really didn't mean, but it was just got the best out of you at the very moment? That's exactly what I'm talking about, right? If that were to happen between people, it would be very hard to resolve because you know, there's going to be a point where you have to agree to disagree. And sometimes we are in a crisis, in a situation where we have to let go and look at the focus as a team, right? You always want to evaluate what is the risk of doing something versus the risk of doing merely nothing, and which one is worse. And sometimes we're stuck, and it's okay. But it's very important that we don't jump to conclusions, right? You never want to assume. I'm sure your teachers have talked to you about assuming, okay? The very important thing is that you have to be conscious of what you say, because it's like a bell. When you hear a bell, you can't unhear it. You already heard it, right? And so what you say and what you do will always affect people. I live by Maya Angelou. I truly believe people forget what you say and people will forget what you do, but people will never forget how you make them feel. And it's that feeling that helps you really go through an intervention. You're friends with people that you are friends with because they make you feel good. And you're not friends with people who you don't like because they made you feel some kind of bad. Do you see how you hold on to that? That's why your teachers tell you your first impression is always very important. Now, I do want to share some of these quotes that I have. You know, the best test of your integrity is how you act when no one is watching you. I can remember not doing things because I knew it was a bad thing, but not just that, I wanted to save my integrity. And here, a hot topic now is accountability. It doesn't matter that this didn't go our way or not. Who is accountable? What should have been done? Because we're a team, right? It doesn't matter what part of that triangle pyramid that you are, whether you're at the highest level, you're the boss, or you're the little ones that are just starting. Because at the end of the day, we all eat at the same table for the same goal, okay? Now, I want you guys to look at this picture before I pop it out. What do you really see here, right? Nothing going on. There's a wolf there. This is somewhere in Alaska. It's very, very cold. They're probably, hunting or going from one side to the next side, right? So this is like a story. When someone tells you something, you only really see the calmer portion of it. But let's just add just a little bit more to this. Look at this picture. You see that guy? He's like running. He's running. What could he be running for? He could be shouting at her like, hurry up, let's go. And she might be saying, hold on, I haven't gotten the ties just quite, right? Look at this one. Now he has a reason to be running. There is the danger, right? His senses is that there's a bear. He's trying to save him. And at this point, it doesn't matter how things are tied. But do you see how people can make rash decisions on not knowing the whole picture? Right? You know one story, not the other story. And so you're stuck on your stories. And you really sometimes have to step back and see from the outside in, right? What do you really see? What is really going on? Because it's very important that we play a role in listening. You can hear something, but you're not listening, right? So if you hear something, that would be an example if maybe a box fell behind me. I turned around and realized it was not a box at all. It was really someone kicking something else, but it wasn't a box. That's what I thought it was, right? So don't assume. You have to really tie in, right? And also, when you see a crisis happening, the way you intervene is you also have to know what part of the crisis are you walking into? Because that is how you're going to contribute. In the nursing field, we have to figure out, okay, if a patient is under cardiac arrest, what do I see in the room happening? And what is not happening that should be? And that is how you contribute to the team. You bring what someone else didn't bring. It's like when you have a party at school and everybody wants to sign up for chips. So you have a lot of chips in the room, a lot of plates and napkins, but then there's no real food. There's no hot dog or hamburger or nachos. Everybody just brought a bunch of chips or maybe cupcakes. Has that happened in your school? Okay, so on to the next one. There's also different types of communication, and we also talk about nonverbal communication. Would you say on those pictures that you see right now that they really care about something? Right? We have some guy that it probably doesn't care. He's kicking up his feet. It's not that important. And that's another thing we have to value in each other is what's important to me is not important to you. And what is important to you may not be important to me. So how do we resolve this? What is important to me should be important to you because you care about me. Because even though the things for you that are important are not important to me, they're going to become important to me. Because they're important to you, right? Isn't that how we feel about our parents sometimes? When something is really important, they just don't understand the value of what it is that you're trying to do. But because it's important to you, it should also be important to them. As well as, don't forget, because they're your parents, right? What's important to them for you should be also important to you. So I hope that didn't really confuse you, but it's just a way of communicating and preventing any crises, especially between the people that you love. But again, back to this nonverbal communication. You can't tell people you care, and then you have like that emoji is just looking up, rolling his eyes, right? Or falling asleep. Because nonverbal communication also can include gestures and facial expressions, body language. I know one of the things that I've had to learn with all the COVID crisis is actually how to smile at people when you have your eyes covered. So I try to do this, but I was told not to because it probably looks very inappropriate or weird, right? But I have to now tell people I'm smiling at you, right? Because I want to make sure that they acknowledge our facial expressions. So I want you also to understand how you respond to a crisis is going to dictate someone else's response. Now, what I mean by that, if I was angry and I'm just yelling, and I'm yelling at you, what are you probably going to do? You're probably going to yell back at me, right? Because I just dictated your response. But if you respond calmly, what's going on? How can I help? I can see that you're stressed. Right? They probably will tone it down and say, I'm so sorry, I am stressed, or I didn't mean to yell at you. You just happen to be the person in the room. So we want to show how behavior expressed can also influence your attitude or approach. So be very watchful. Here it's to recognize what is the behavior. You could have someone with a behavior of anxiety, right? What do you do when people are anxious? right? You probably don't want to scare them. Oh yeah, you are going to fail the test. No, that's going to make them more anxious. So what is your appropriate approach? You want to be supportive. Hey, listen, we studied, you know your stuff. We don't have to worry about that. You're doing great, okay? I think once you get started on the test, you're just going to fly by it and be the first one to finish. I'm sure of it, right? Wouldn't you feel good if someone helped you in that portion of anxiety? You also have defenses. We just talked about that, being defensive. If someone is being defensive, right, because they're probably feeling like everybody's attacking them, something is wrong, right? When someone is defensive, do you want to tell them to calm down? Probably not. You're probably going to say, hey, listen, you are in a room full of people. We need to tone it down. You want people to be aware of what's going on. You give them a directive, right? I don't want to go inside. Listen, either you go inside or I walk you inside, but you can't stay here. It's this or that. You don't just say, get in there, because you're not giving them a choice. And that's the number one thing. When you take people's choices away, they're less likely to follow commands. So it's either this or that, right? If it's black or it's white, there's no gray. So either we do this or we do that, right? Now, if we don't follow and engage in that way, people can engage in risk behaviors, right? What are risk behaviors? They pick up a chair and throw it across, or they start to threaten you verbally or physically. That can be very dangerous. We are taught not to go, especially if there's any arms in the school. You should never do that, right? But we want to keep people safe. So this is when you do a physical intervention. We won't explore that very much because I want to concentrate more on your responses mentally, right? Because we need to think about how our responses also dictate someone else's response. Now, tension reduction. Tension reduction means to say, you know what? It's not in their characteristic to behave this way, but I see now what I've caused, and now I'm kind of repenting about what I did. I'm really, really sorry, right? There's like a million sorries. You're really, really sorry about what you did. And this is when you give people a therapeutic report. Okay, yes, you probably shouldn't shoved Tommy over here. That was not the way to get your candy, right? So I want to also look at another slideshow is look at these pictures, right? We have the first little girl. Would you say she looks nervous or she's upset? What about the second lady with the hand up? Could you say that she would be maybe aggressive or defensive? I know that baby's so cute. I love him. I can't get rid of him. But that's just to show you the fist up. I'm going to do this if you're misbehavior, right? And then we have the gentleman crying upset. So wouldn't you say she looks like she's a bit anxious? What about her? She definitely looks defensive. What about our baby? He could probably engage in risk behavior. They kind of smack everybody because they're old enough to do it, right? It doesn't hurt that bad, but that is not good behavior for an adult. What about this one? Tension reduction, right? He's probably sorry about all the things he did. The mean that I want to bring up with these pictures is that not everybody expresses their emotions the same, right? This anxious girl, couldn't she be tension reduction? Maybe she's the one that hit Tommy, right? So now she's really sorry about what she did. What about Miss Defensive? Oh, this is what she does right before she's gonna maybe slap somebody or hit somebody with her hand. And what about baby? This is maybe how he gets defensive. Oh no, you didn't, right? What about this gentleman? What if he's not tension reduction? What if he didn't do anything bad? He's just very anxious, right? I see couples all the time at the movies, or I did when the girl was crying. When the girl was crying, they all automatically assumed it was the guy that made her cry, right? But we don't know what's going on, right? So it's never good to assume. And it's always important to remember that people express themselves much differently, right? When people understand the process of behaviors and you recognize behavior escalation, will help those who need to intervene. So you can't intervene unless you know the behavior, right? The person responding to the crisis has to realize that his or her behavior has a tremendous impact on an individual. I can't better express this when I let my toddler walk around, learning how to walk. And then all of a sudden, they'll trip and fall and they want to cry. But what do they do first? They look up and they look around to the room to see who is present. I always pretend it didn't happen. I just look up and guess what? Baby gets up, brushes the knee off, walks away. What would happen if there was a room full of people and they all just gasped? Baby would cry, right? Because they're influenced on the reactions of everyone else in the room. So in many cases, our behavior depends entirely on how that person reacts. Does that make sense? All right, so remember, when someone is anxious, it's very important for you to be supportive and learn how to be supportive, right? It's okay. No, it's not okay. Okay, but I can see how it makes you feel. So that's important to acknowledge. Defensive, right? You want to give them a directive. We need to either do this or do that. I want to go outside. Okay, we will go outside when you clean your room. When you clean your room, then we will go outside. Or when you get in the car with your parents, I'm late for the movies. Okay, but put on your seatbelt. When you put on your seatbelt, then we will go. You don't put on your seatbelt, then we won't go. Right? You're giving them a choice to put on their seatbelt or not. If we're late, it's because you didn't put on your seatbelt, right? And we always want to avoid risk behavior. When you take your time with anxiety and defensive responses, this is the last thing that you want to do is risk behavior. You want to protect them. The only things that I can think of that are related to the community is when a baby is in danger, or they're hitting people with a stick and they actually don't watch their fall and they fall, or they're chasing someone with an inappropriate object, like maybe they want to play with a bat. I know my son played with the bat and the ball for baseball, but he didn't realize the gravity of that baseball. Right? And then also tension reduction. And this is a good time to talk to people when they are feeling better, right? They're open to listen. You can't get a defensive person to listen to what they need to do. It has to be tension reduced. Okay, so make sure you provide empathy. Treat everyone with respect. If you work in customer service, provide good customer service. Put yourself in their shoes. Work on communication skills, because they're going to help you regardless of where you are. And hold your composure, right? Don't wear your emotions on your sleeve. Don't let this, because sometimes, remember, we talked about body language and your commitment, because you want to work together as a team. I really appreciate you all's time today. I hope that you're able to grasp something to really help you in the future regarding any conflict resolution, so that you can help understand each other. So thank you.